Hello everyone and welcome back to the conference. I'm Ryan G, Head of Strategy and Development at FTE, and we're now focusing on how digital transformation can help to deliver enhanced customer experiences and operational efficiency at airports. I'm very pleased to be joined by Phil Silver, Transportation Leader at AWS. Now, AWS is of course the digital and innovation sponsor at Virtual Expo this week. And Phil is with us today to share a vision of modernisation, resiliency and cost savings for the airport sector, all enabled by the cloud. So let's hear from Phil right away. So Phil, if you would like to share your slides and start your presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. Hello, my name is Phil Silver. I lead the U.S. state and local government transportation vertical practice at Amazon Web Services, also known as AWS. It's great to be here and to spend a few minutes with you today. In the transportation sector, AWS's goal is to support all of the organizations that are tasked with moving people or things safely, efficiently, economically, and equitably, working with customers and partners who recognize that the power of cloud computing is key to their future. At AWS, this relates to our engagements with departments of transportation, highway and traffic authorities, tollways, airports and airlines, seaports, and public transit agencies. Across all of these transportation vertical markets, customers are using the AWS cloud to meet the challenges of modernization, increasing resiliency, and reducing costs, with an eye on what's important today and what is needed to sustain and serve their customers over the long haul, 10, 20 or more years into the future. Their efforts also play a role in recovery, an important challenge that every provider of transportation services is now facing. Today, I'd like to start with an overview of cloud computing. Let's take a look at a short video that demonstrates how the AWS cloud is enabling innovation for millions of customers and their patrons, including airports and airlines.
AWS is the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform. Millions of customers trust AWS to power their infrastructure and applications. Organizations of every type and size are using AWS to lower costs, become more agile, and innovate faster. AWS provides on-demand delivery of technology services via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. You can use these services to build and run virtually any type of application without upfront costs or ongoing commitments. You only pay for what you use. AWS gives you more services and more features within those services than any other cloud provider. This makes it faster, easier, and more cost-effective to move your existing applications to the cloud and to build anything you can imagine. From infrastructure technologies like compute, storage, and databases, to emerging technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, data lakes and analytics, and Internet of Things. Building on AWS means you can choose the right tool for the job. For example, AWS offers the widest variety of databases that are purpose-built for different types of applications. With AWS, you can leverage the latest technologies to experiment and innovate more quickly. We are continually accelerating our pace of innovation to invent entirely new technologies you can use to transform your business. Like pioneering the serverless computing space with the launch of Aws Lambda, which lets developers run their code without provisioning or managing servers. And AWS built Amazon Sagemaker, a fully managed machine learning service that empowers everyday developers and scientists to use machine learning without any previous experience. We are constantly expanding our global network of AWS regions, so you can access AWS services to build and run your applications from anywhere in the world. Each of these regions has multiple availability zones that are physically separated from each other and connected by low latency, high throughput, and highly redundant networking. This makes it easy to design and operate applications that are scalable, fault tolerant, and highly available. our infrastructure is built to satisfy the security standards of the most risk-sensitive organizations. You also have access to the AWS Partner Network, which has thousands of systems integrators who specialize in AWS services, and tens of thousands of independent software vendors who adapt their technology to work on AWS. With the largest community of customers across every industry, AWS has unmatched experience and operational expertise you can depend upon for your most important applications and every imaginable use case.
AWS provides the infrastructure to accelerate modernization, resiliency, cost savings, and recovery initiatives. These are the key takeaways that I wish to offer to you today. First, the term cloud computing refers to the on-demand delivery of IT resources via the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. Instead of buying, owning, and maintaining your own data centers and servers, organizations can acquire technology such as compute, power, storage, databases, and other service on an as-needed basis. It is similar to how consumers flip a switch to turn on the lights in their home, and the power company sends electricity. Second, one of the main reasons that organizations around the world are choosing cloud is that it allows them to innovate faster. With the cloud, they can focus their highly valuable IT resources on developing applications that differentiate their business and transform customer experiences, instead of the undifferentiated heavy lifting of managing infrastructures and data centers. Third, customers are choosing AWS over other providers because it has a lot more functionality, the largest and most vibrant community of customers and partners, the most proven operational and security expertise, and the business is innovating at a faster clip, especially in new areas such as machine learning and artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and serverless computing. Here's how innovators create delightful customer experiences on AWS. They are agile and can quickly spin up resources as they need them, deploying hundreds or even thousands of servers in minutes. This means that they can very quickly develop and roll out new applications, and development teams can experiment and innovate more quickly and frequently. They save on cost. With AWS, capital expense is traded for variable expense, and charges are only incurred as IT is consumed. Leveraging AWS's economies of scale, Dow Jones, for example, has estimated a global infrastructure savings of $100 million. They only provision what they need and don't have to over-provision to ensure that they have enough capacity to handle their business operations at the peak of activity. AWS manages and maintains the technology infrastructure in a secure environment. That means they only provision and pay for the amount of resources that they actually need, knowing that they can instantly scale up or down along with the needs of their business, which also reduces costs and improves their ability to meet users' demands. And they breathe innovation. As stated earlier, they are able to innovate faster because they can focus precious IT resources on differentiation, long-term planning, and transforming customer experiences instead of managing the upkeep, maintenance, upgrades, and refreshes to on-premises infrastructure and data centers. And finally, they can grow and scale globally with Amazon Web Services. With 24 launched regions, 77 availability zones, and over 217 points of presence, AWS customers can deploy cloud technology anywhere, anytime. The travel and hospitality world looks different now than it did, but we're working across the industry to help them recover and rebuild for the future. Now, let's take a look at a short video that demonstrates how the AWS cloud is enabling digital transformation in airports, airlines, and travel and hospitality.
The travel and hospitality industry is transforming. Airlines are flying further than ever before by using machine learning to simulate thousands of flight paths to find the most fuel-efficient one. Home-sharing startups have gone global, thanks to the scalability and agility of cloud computing. Iconic restaurant brands have dramatically improved their customer service by utilizing a cloud-based contact center. Airports around the world are delivering seamless customer experiences by deploying real-time data collection and analytics. And some of the world's largest hotel companies are using sophisticated personalization technology to help guests enjoy the perfect stay. How do these companies gain their competitive edge? AWS is how. With AWS behind them, whatever travel and hospitality companies can dream up for their customers can be possible. AWS offers the most services, capabilities, and experience, and the fastest rate of innovation in the cloud. This includes the most comprehensive set of machine learning and artificial intelligence services, the broadest and deepest IoT offerings, and the ability to quickly and easily manage data to gain insights into operations and customers. Leading travel and hospitality companies of every segment and size are working with AWS to transform their business, delivering personalization, connected experiences, and best-in-class customer service. AWS technology helps enhance customer experiences. And our solutions help industry leaders reduce IT costs and optimize core operations in order to increase operational efficiency. Learn how AWS is helping transform the travel and hospitality industry at aws.com/travel.
Across our travel and hospitality practice, we hear customers wanting to transform their business by enhancing the experience of travelers and to optimize their operations. That's especially true of airports. Let's take a look at a few examples. A major airport with multiple terminals, over 400 retail shops, and tens of thousands of travelers passing through daily pre-COVID, they wanted to deliver greater personalization to travelers wherever they are, no matter what digital channel they use. The airport first needed to consolidate customer, shopping, and travel data dispersed throughout the system. With AWS, they created a new data master management platform, enabling the launch of personalized marketing campaigns to customers across channels. The airport created new digital products and services across mobile and the web, anticipating and serving customer needs. Through their holistic view of the customer traveler, they can make personalized shopping and entertainment offers. Retail traffic and revenue per customer have increased, enabling the airport to maintain its status as one of the world's best. They accomplished this by consolidating customer, shopping, and travel data, all of which resided in disparate systems. By integrating a campaign management solution, they can anticipate customer behavior and create personalized shopping and entertainment offers. In this instance, retail sales increased by 8%. Today, all of this airport's customer-facing platforms, including e-commerce, websites, mobile apps, training platform, flight and luggage systems, run on AWS, providing a modern, resilient, and cost-effective solution to the millions of travelers who use this facility every year. With 3 airports serving over 60 million passengers per year, this international airport operator needed a more flexible and scalable solution than their existing mature stack of BI and database products for reporting. The new solution needed to handle seasonality spikes and data streaming, empowering them to enable a real-time approach across the entire customer journey. They required an architecture to meet this new challenge of delivering benefits without the need for large-scale investments. In 6 months, they went from a single instance database to a scalable data warehouse using Amazon Redshift and other AWS services. They went from a daily store-level sales figures to over 90% of all sales automatically ingested at the product level from over 50 retailers, and from a single access reporting tool to users being able to visualize data and perform self-service analytics. Insights led to a new retail plan, including positioning of duty-free shops based on transaction data, and they saw a 10% uptick in sales. In partnership with AWS, Millennium Automation have leveraged their advanced self-service technology to help make the world safer by making customer-facing devices touchless and evolving them into health screening points using contactless vital sign detection. Millennium's self-service devices can be controlled by voice or head movement, eliminating the need to touch surfaces. Adding touchless control to any self-service device using their artificial intelligence-powered sensored array automatically reduces the risk of viral or bacterial transmission. Stakeholders no longer need to touch a screen, pin pad, or physical surface, controlling and interacting with a device from a safe distance via head movement. The thermal imaging system in the kiosk reads, processes, and analyzes vital health data during a transaction. If the data, temperature, heartbeat, etc., exceeds the threshold, the system sends a notification to the service desk agent and stops all other transactions. Their technology gives greater confidence in traveling by making various customer-facing devices touchless and evolving them into convenient health screening points using contactless vital sign detection. And their kiosks also allow remote video conference capability to interact with users to determine how to address a particular situation. Their vision is a frictionless, integrated, world-class passenger experience using self-service, providing passenger touch points at every point along the journey, before the airport, at the airport, in the air, and for their onward journey. Genera provides a holistic, real-time view of your customer's journey across the travel ecosystem, letting you provide the seamless experiences and hyper-personalized offers that drive increased revenue, loyalty, and direct engagement. The Genera Airport Data Platform uses the AWS cloud to engage airports and airlines, where both benefit from knowing when passengers are traveling to engage at the right time, hyper-personalizing offers based on the unique circumstances of the customer's journey, and expanding relationships with marketing partners and platforms using a standard API solution. It is a data platform that creates an enhanced customer experience by collaborating with the airlines, retail and restaurant vendors, and lounge providers using open data standards, purpose-built databases, and extensible serverless architecture by consolidating schedules, real-time flight information, traveler check-ins, loyalty transactions, lounge uses, and airport purchases. It is an industry-wide platform. Any travel-related company can participate. Work with any of your partners in the industry. It provides efficient connectivity. Connect to Genera once, then work with partners at the push of a button. No bespoke implementation required. And it delivers real-time insight. Better serve your customers by knowing what is happening on their trip while it is happening. This is an example of a solution specifically designed for airports that can optimize airport operations in real time and predict costs, revenue, turnaround times, and potential delays using open data standards, purpose-built databases, and extensible serverless architecture. For airports with multiple terminals, it can optimize terminal and gate openings when experiencing drastically reduced schedules using published schedules, known operating cost, terminal and gate configurations, and flight information for real-time decision-making. So optimize your airport operations by monitoring activities in real time, predicting costs, revenue, turnaround times, and potential delays, and using open standards, purpose-built databases, and an extensible serverless architecture. This is the one place where schedules, real-time flight information, weather forecasts, aircraft position data, airport resources, billing, and more come together. Here's an example. Flight data is created by converting the schedule files into individual flights. Hourly and daily passenger traffic and landing slots by hour are created based on flight data. Optimized airport terminal and gate assignments are created based on terminal and gate configurations and operating costs. Visualization and reports are provided using on-demand AWS services. The Terminal Optimizer can also leverage the public data sets available on AWS Data Exchange to enhance the decision-making. Here's a solution for managing queue depth. Monitoring and manage queue lengths, physical separation, and waits, providing real-time alerts to travelers and airport personnel. To perform inference training, the cameras collect video streams for 4 days or more. This recording is used to tune and train Amazon Sagemaker to generate head detection model. Use strategically placed cameras and AWS AI capabilities to measure queue depth and deliver threshold alerts in areas of interest. AWS IoT Greengrass, AWS IoT Core, and AWS IoT Device Management manage the cameras and run inference on the edge using purpose-built databases and serverless architecture to deliver microservices and alerts. This results in an improved and safer passenger experience that increases confidence to travel again, showing queue depth on a monitor, notifications to a smart speaker, or updating the states of IoT light bulbs to direct travelers in a busy period. Finally, AWS Re Invent is a learning conference hosted by Amazon Web Services for the global cloud computing community. The event features keynotes, announcements, launches, sessions, and more. reInvent started on November 30th and runs until December 18th. It's 100% virtual and free. And as you can see, you can register at aws.com/reinvent. Please search for these great travel and hospitality sessions and more to add them to your schedule. Thank you for attending today's presentation. Please visit the AWS booth in the Virtual Expo for much more information and to contact AWS representatives. And feel free to reach out to me for more information. Wishing you the best.
Thank you very much indeed for that fantastic presentation, Phil. So we do have a bit of time for some questions. So if you're happy to, we can jump straight into the Q&A. So perhaps if you're happy to stop sharing your screen, then we'll see you on screen and our audience can see you for the Q&A discussion. So thanks very much for sharing that information on all of the products and services that AWS offers and great insight into how you can really help the travel and hospitality industry. That really is valuable for our audience. And during the next few minutes, I'm keen to talk to you about some of the trends that we've seen emerge in the industry over the course of 2020. And to start with, I'd like to get your thoughts on how you see the travel and hospitality industry responding to COVID-19, and also to what extent you've seen stakeholders' priorities shift as a result of the pandemic.
Sure. The themes that I shared in the presentation around modernization, resiliency, and cost savings are only reinforced because of the pandemic. I see consensus around realizing that we cannot or will not go back to where we were. The industry was already planning for a doubling in volume by 2037, and that would only come with a shift in priorities. So COVID is accelerating many trends that were already happening in the industry. And recovery is really a prelude for accelerating digital innovation. One big trend, of course, right now is an increased need for cost saving, although it's never gone out of style. AWS allows customer to trade capital expense for variable expense and only pay for IT as they consume it. And the variable expense is much lower than what customers can do for themselves because of AWS's economies of scale. Melia Hotels, who is on AWS, was able to save 58% in the face of the pandemic by linking demand to cost. We describe it, as you saw in the presentation, as similar to flipping a switch for getting electricity and only paying for what is used.
Great, thank you, Phil. And I'm keen as well to dive into any other trends that you've seen emerge as a direct result of COVID-19 and its widespread impact on the industry?
Well, I've never washed my hands as much, nor been concerned about proximity to the people in public that I am now, in airports, restaurants, even walking my dogs in my neighborhood. These are likely leading to permanent changes in behavior, like shaking hands or conducting virtual meetings. Right off the bat, I'm seeing things like keeping track of restroom cleanliness, queue length, or monitoring physical distancing behaviors taking on more importance than ever. We're also seeing companies innovate during this time. Cloud allows customers to innovate faster because they can focus their highly valuable IT resources on developing applications that differentiate their business and transform customer experiences. Instead, as I stated earlier, the undifferentiated heavy lifting of managing infrastructure and data centers. Contactless, for instance, is another quickly accelerating trend. Airport passenger experience company Millennium Automation has been able to create a seamless contactless airport check-in in which they are rapidly rolling out. And when COVID hit, they were also able to quickly roll out health screenings to pinpoint sick passengers, which was reported on by Skiff. What is amazing is that in less than 8 weeks, Millennium was able to evolve its customer-facing kiosks into health screening points, using contactless detection to measure 3 vital signs: temperature, heart rate, and respiratory rate. Now that's innovation.
Absolutely, I completely agree, and I'm pleased to say that we'll all be hearing from Millennium in a little while, so the audience can learn even more about that pioneering project. And you've mentioned, of course, innovation and digital transformation, which are very hot topics for everybody in the industry, perhaps even more so in light of everything that's happened in 2020. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on how you think the travel and hospitality industry as a whole compares to other verticals in terms of the speed at which it's really embraced digital transformation. And also, would it be fair to say that there is still some catching up to do across the industry?
Yes, the consensus is that travel and hospitality has some catching up to do when it comes to digital transformation. However, it's not for a lack of desire to do so. There are examples in other industries where legacy systems and the technical debt associated with maintaining them has limited their ability to innovate at scale. Therefore, it has happened much slower than anyone would like. The Skiff Digital Transformation Report that is available at our stand in the Virtual Expo was the result of surveying close to 1,000 executives in the travel and hospitality industry on their attitudes related to digital transformation. It showed that 78 of respondents now think digital transformation is more important than before. And 77% agreed with the statement, cloud technology can help improve the customer experience and optimize our operations. The quantitative research mirrors what we have heard anecdotally from our customers. Let me take the tolling industry, for example. In many ways parallel to an airport, in that the toll authority is tasked with moving people efficiently and safely from one place to another, just via a different mode of transportation. This industry has been traditionally dominated by just a few very large system integrators who built large, custom, monolithic, and proprietary on-premises solutions that were hard or impossible to disassemble into their components. For example, replacing a call center solution without disrupting the customer relationship management or financial systems. That is changing with the advent of componentized digital processes and tools that support microservices, open source databases, advanced analytics, computer vision, and big data that are so much a part of what the AWS cloud is about. Part of this is driven by current and recent events: COVID, the disruption created by the emergence of transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, climate change's impact on the transportation networks, especially aviation. Companies like Lyft, who are built on AWS, have attributed their success to the agility, reliability, and durability that the cloud has enabled. In working with customers, we have highly capable travel and hospitality competency partners in the Amazon Partner Network who are working with airlines and airports on their digital transformation journey.
Well, thank you very much for that insight, Phil. And I would love to ask you more questions, but we are just about out of time for this segment. But please, everybody, do stick with us as we are going to hear from Millennium Automation CEO Aaron Hornleyman next. But for now, thank you very much to Phil Silver, Transportation Leader at AWS.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. Yes, I'm now delighted to be talking with Aaron Hornleyman, the CEO of Millennium Automation, a really exciting and disruptive technology business headquartered out of Australia, in Melbourne, in fact, that has been making big strides in aviation in recent years and has been able to supply solutions to key organizations in the aviation industry, including the airports of Hong Kong and Sydney and airlines such as Qantas and Etihad. In a nice bit of continuity, I can tell you that Aaron and Phil actually know each other very well because Millennium employ a suite of services from AWS to create their touchless offering that eliminates outdated, confusing, and time-consuming processes and that increases passenger flow, which Aaron is going to tell us about today. So how are you, Aaron? And just how long have you known Phil for?
I'm very well, Daniel, and thanks for having me here today. I actually haven't known Phil that long. It was at the beginning of COVID when we started talking. But what's been interesting is that we have had a phone call pretty much once a week, the entirety of 2020, as we've been looking at how we could not just apply automation into the aviation space, but also outside of aviation and take learnings from complex environments like airports and take them into other industries and how we can take those learnings back into the aviation sector.
Fantastic. Okay, well, that's good to hear. And so let's hear your presentation now, Aaron, on how Millennium is helping reboot passenger services through touchless technology. The audience is yours.
Sure. So I thought I'd give you all a bit of a background on Millennium because it's been quite an interesting year 2020 for all of us and how we've adapted to the situation and how we think it's really exciting to take some of that new innovation and bring it back into aviation and how we believe that's actually going to help with the rebound as we learn to deal with COVID norm and hopefully post-COVID world. So, we were founded in 2015 and the whole vision behind Millennium was about building a seamless experience for passengers through the airport. And that was all about using innovative technology. And we focused on technologies like voice recognition, the ability to predict passengers' data and actually create a personalized experience and then integrate that through the entire flow. I think what COVID has done is shown that actually that whole concept is more relevant now, not just because it's about providing a great passenger experience, but also making sure that passengers feel confident, making sure passengers want to come back to travel, making sure passengers actually see it as an efficient way to get from A to B, because everyone's going to be questioning how they travel moving forward, not just, again, during COVID, but also post-COVID. So when we start thinking about the entire passenger journey, the obvious spaces, places when they start from home and when they get on board the aircraft. So we've started thinking about, check-in, other than the fact that you need to check into your flight and check your seat and print out your bag tags. What else do passengers need to do beforehand? And one of the key things we think moving forward will be enrollment of biometrics. Now, while we've seen a number of POCs putting this in place, we've seen a number of attempts to do it. I don't think there's really been a coalescence of or an agreement of how that should be done. A number of airports have looked to do that when a passenger arrives at the airport. There's a discussion around should it be an airport responsibility or an airline responsibility. Ultimately, I think COVID is actually going to drive us toward, well, that doesn't really matter so much whose responsibility it is, but that it needs to be done so that passengers, again, aren't having to necessarily go to a traditional check-in desk. Passengers aren't having to interact with people as much. We want to make sure we keep as much social distancing as possible, not just for now, but also in the future to get as much efficiency in place. So the whole idea is that people should check in well before their flight, they should enroll their biometrics, and that their data should follow them as they come to the airport. And when they are at the airport and they are ready to drop off their bag or potentially to upgrade their seat or do anything else in that initial phase when they arrive at the airport, that it's entirely touchless. And the type of touchless technologies we believe in are around voice recognition, virtual touchscreen control, as well as the ability to read documents like passports and IDs and boarding passes simply by holding them up to sensor arrays and cameras. So again, the experience is ultimately seamless, but also doesn't necessarily need that direct interface with another human being. Now, if you look at trying to automate it in that way, one thing that we often think about, or that we really, I guess, zoom in on, is how do we make sure that interaction is as natural as possible? And so again, that's where technologies like voice recognition come into place, because that's how we all naturally interface. And I'll talk about it in my next slide, exactly how we make that work in a loud environment. We also think that the shopping experience at the airport is going to change moving forward, leaning in on digitizing it more and more so that we use things like voice recognition, touchless control, using biometrics to understand the passenger and the context of that passenger. And so they can actually go into places like virtual shopping screens and talk and say that I want a particular item and have it delivered exactly to their hotel, to their home, wherever they're going along their journey. Again, there are a number of benefits here. There's efficiency benefits, not just for the passenger and getting through the whole process. There's obviously more efficiency in terms of the way airports get to design their retail and their revenue generating spaces, along with the airline, who don't necessarily have to carry that additional weight on board. The next part along the journey is actually having virtual assistants. We've all been through that experience where we've arrived at an airport and that we need to reprint a boarding pass, or there's been a disruption of some sort, and we need to do a rebooking. Again, those scenes of having hundreds of people line up at a service desk waiting to be helped, they should be eliminated by the use of technology, making it nice and easy by going up to a device that they can talk to naturally in any language that they speak and have their flight and disruption managed seamlessly. Finally, automated boarding is going to be much more easier. We believe in this idea of an always open barrier. So rather than having automated boarding gates that open and close for every passenger, it's effectively a channel that's always open that only closes on the exception rather than on every single individual opening and closing. Again, that's a more natural flow for the passenger, and it's also a better experience, a more welcome experience, while implementing something that is automated. Again, tying back in technologies like biometrics means the entire flow from curbside to boarding the aircraft can be automated. We can minimize that direct contact going forward while still having a relatively natural experience. So some of the key technologies to power that. I've spoken a lot about voice recognition. One of the questions I often get asked is, how will voice recognition work in an airport-like environment where there's a lot of noise, there's the clacking of trolleys, people talking, PA announcements, etc. Millennium's worked very closely together with Amazon Web Services to be able to create technologies that allow us to deal with those very issues. So we're able to run our voice recognition capability in environments with up to 85 decibels of background noise. Now, to give you some level of context, that's the equivalent of having a tractor drive past at the same time. We do that by using an advanced sensor array that actually looks at where you're talking. So it uses a camera to understand where you're talking and when you're talking, and then a microphone array of directional microphones that pick the exact microphone that's best aligned to the travel of your speech, and then use the other microphones to remove the background noise and effectively clean the audio, so we can then send that to the Amazon Web Services, which can transcribe it and give us the context of what that passenger is talking about. Another key technology we think that will help power this entire journey is the idea of virtual touchscreens. So we're all used to going up to a touchscreen, whether it's on a kiosk or whether it's going to an ATM. But in this new world where passengers are going to be concerned about touching common surfaces and there's going to be a higher concern around hygiene, the idea of being able to simply just look at the screen and select the item that you like to use, we think is going to become key. Now, this is another example of a technology that we had been developing prior to COVID. So we'd actually been developing this technology for when there were passengers that had accessibility issues, whether they were in a wheelchair or they had a walker. Rather than having to strain themselves, they could simply look at the screen and select a particular item they needed, whether it was to select the check-in option or enter their PNR or whatever it might be. Again, it has even greater application now in this new world, and we think having these kind of multimodal approaches, offering voice recognition, offering virtual touchscreen capability, offering the ability to control devices through your mobile phone, all these options are important, and we can't just rely on a single pathway for a passenger, because not everyone may be able to interface using voice recognition. Not everyone may be able to use the virtual touchscreen technology. Not everyone might have a mobile phone that's compatible. So having these options available, I think, is important to the future of how we implement self-service. If you start thinking about biometrics, I think biometrics has been something that this industry has been talking about some time. And yet in this day and age, it's on most people's mobile phones. We're even seeing cars now implemented for you to start the engine, etc. Biometrics is going to become a key part to the overall journey. The important part that we need to all agree on as an industry is, where does that data lie? Is it a case of that it sit with the airport? Does it sit with the airline? Does it sit with some overall governing body? Our general view is that it actually should sit with the passenger. The passenger should have the data on their own personal, the biometric data on their own personal device, and have the option to share it and enable it as they go through the journey. And that way, minimizing some of the concerns around privacy, and at the same time, getting all the benefits that we would expect to get by having the seamless experience, with not having to worry about traditional paper boarding passes or necessarily having to have QR codes along the entire pathway. Other key technologies we think would really help empower this experience across the airport is sentiment analysis. So actually trying to understand whether a passenger is happy, whether they're frustrated, what their experience is like in real time, will allow us to augment in-person assistance in case it's ever needed. So if a passenger is checking in and they're frustrated with their process for whatever reason, maybe they're not necessarily adapted with using the technology, maybe they've got an issue with their booking, being able to actually analyze how they're feeling and then offer them a virtual assistance through video conferencing, or even having somebody come up to them and say, hey, we've noticed that you're experiencing some issue, how can I help? I think adding that bit of personalized interaction will really change the way people think about self-service in an airport environment. No longer will they think about it just being a simple removal of that human expression or that human contact, but it's actually something that's efficient and can be adapted to their needs in case they're having an issue. Because ultimately, where a lot of automation technology becomes a sticking point for people is when it doesn't work or when they're frustrated by it. And so we think about technologies that help alleviate that. That's a very clear pathway forward. Having data that follows you is also very important. I spoke about the fact that we believe in the idea of your biometric data following you along the journey. Well, it shouldn't just be about your biometric data. It should also be your entire booking record and your personalized information around what your preferences are. Number of benefits there. One is that if you use technologies like proximity and you're able to cache data based on understanding when a person is actually going to use a device, you can have a much quicker interaction. So it's not just a case of what we're all used to now. You scan a boarding pass and then you have the little circle waiting for the data to load from whatever external service it needs to come from. But basically having it there ready and waiting for you so you can interact with it straight away. I think it'll really change the efficiency profile, but again, this perception about it necessarily being clunky and making it as seamless as possible. Ultimately, passengers are going to expect their experience to be as seamless as the experiences they are used to on their mobile phones, or again, in the cars that we see these days. So trying to replicate that in the airport space and with airlines, I think, is absolutely critical. Finally, the cloud is a key technology. Now, I know we've all been talking about the cloud for some time, but when we think about the power of the cloud, it's not just about having everything remotely hosted. It's actually about making sure that these capabilities, these technologies that I've talked about, can be deployed easily. We're seeing more and more smaller tier airports like our partners in Queenstown and Avalon airports, passengers that have less than 2 million passengers a year, or airports that have less than 2 million passengers a year, adopt cutting edge self-service technology because of the cloud. it allows them to simply deploy it with providing an internet connection with redundancy and with the right security, rather than necessarily having to put in a full infrastructure in place and having to have system administrators there working full time to keep it up and running. So, you know, the idea of saying, well, if you can go to a .com, that you can also provide this capability, I think is a real key driver, and it's going to be a disruptor moving forward. And I think airlines and airports need to start thinking about how they're going to leverage this capability, rather than, you know, the old adage of, no, I need my traditional infrastructure with me to deploy it. Again, it's going to challenge the cost base. It's going to make the cost base slower. It's going to make it easier to deploy. It's going to make the installation easier, the maintenance easier. So we see the cloud as an enabling technology, and it's why we partner closely with AWS to allow that both in a robust way and in a secure way, because ultimately they're the concerns around the cloud. How do we make sure it's robust? How do we make sure it's redundant? How do we make sure it's secure and that I'm never going to be offline or I'm not going to be disrupted? Just to give you a bit of an idea of how some of this can all come together, this video that I'm showing now shows the idea of using virtual touchscreen technology by looking at the screen and selecting the right options. The capability will also show, the video will also show the use of voice recognition. And while we haven't spoken about it too much today, we've also added in there the ability to do vital sign detection. So understanding whether somebody's got a fever, what their heart rate is and what their respiratory rate is as they're going through the process, in case there's a particular concern about a person's fitness to fly. So there you go, Daniel.
Great stuff. Thank you, Aaron. A lot of fantastic technology and ideas for use cases there. So thank you very much for that contribution. I've got a few questions, if you don't mind, to follow up on. Obviously, in terms of the voice recognition, obviously part of this touchless effort that the industry's gone down. I think we all thought immediately, we all got used to the Alexas and, you know, talking to Siri and this kind of stuff. And we thought that might be something that really starts to take off in travel. But I haven't seen too much of that yet. I think a lot of the time we're seeing airlines really leveraging their mobile apps and things like that to operate a lot of this technology. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit about your conversations with airlines and airports about this, and whether you do see, as say, the voice being picked up more as a way in which passengers will communicate with the technology around them at the airport?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Daniel. You know, it's been easier to implement technologies like using a mobile phone as a sort of a peripheral device to the overall experience. But still, there's a learning curve when using those type of technologies. Not everyone is necessarily au fait with using a mobile device all the time. Not everyone's necessarily used to using different applications, right? So if you're using a mobile phone, it might be different experience from one airline to another. Is it the airport's application? So there's a little bit of complexity there. Yeah. When I look at voice recognition, I really think that that's a natural way for humans to interact. And I think the reason why you haven't necessarily seen it rolled out broadly yet is that the technology is still very new. But ultimately, I think that's where we're going to go down with. So if I can go up to any kiosk, any ATM, any information display, any type of self-service interface, doesn't matter whether it's within aviation or outside of aviation, I can have a natural conversation with it. That's going to be far more intuitive for everyone, irrespective of the language. It's going to be a far more natural user experience than saying, now you need to pull out your device, you need to open up, work out which application you need to use, potentially scan a QR code or make sure that it links in some sort of way. So, you know, the use of mobile phones, I think, is a great idea and should be implemented, but we shouldn't rely just on that. We need to have multiple options depending on how the passenger feels comfortable. And ultimately, we should be looking at how do we make the experience as natural as possible. Yeah,
very good, very good. And I know somewhat your surprise, I guess, that you've been working in some other verticals this year as a result of your capabilities that are so well suited to this post-COVID world. I mean, would you mind elaborating a little bit more about the work you've been doing in some of the other verticals and perhaps some of the lessons you've learned from that could be applied back into aviation?
Absolutely. So yes, you know, at the beginning of 2020, we were a business entirely focused on aviation. Come February of 2020, we started looking at, well, how can we actually take the technologies and all the wonderful things we've learned with our airport and airline partners and apply them outside of aviation and see how we can help with adapting to a COVID normal world. two key technologies that really have got a lot of the people's attention, or a lot of industry attention outside of aviation. That's really the whole touchless capability. So implementing voice recognition, we've implemented into the aged care centres, into health networks. It's even been installed in military bases. It's been quite extraordinary, the type of environments we've installed it into. Also putting our symptom detection technology, so the ability to detect fevers, their heart rate and their respiratory rate. Again, it's a similar different verticals outside of aviation. I think one of the key things we've learned, is we all know that airlines and airports, the environment is, very dispersed. It's the different types of passengers we have. No one passenger is the same, and so we need to cater for a very diverse environment. Well, that's the same outside of aviation, but the user behavior, the way people interact with the devices, tends to be a little bit more different. In some ways, we actually found them a little less accommodating when they were outside of the airport. I think everyone understands when you're going through, or a lot of passengers understand when they're going through the experience through an airport, self-service often makes their life easier, it makes it faster. And yet when you're thinking about going into an aged care centre where you have a lot of elderly people going through all the time, sometimes it might be seen as an inconvenience. And so I'm being able to adapt the technology and actually work out and understand how do we improve that user experience for anyone, irrespective of demographic, are learnings that we're bringing into our aviation portfolio that we think is going to ultimately make it a better proposition.
Very good. And as I say, you've been perhaps involved in more touchless kind of rollout efforts than any other supplier out there right now. I mean, do you have any key learnings for airlines and airports out there that are sort of looking to still go through this shortly that you can share to help them with their efforts in that space?
Yeah, so I think the key learning is don't necessarily go down the path of only offering one option. If you rely on one option, quite often you will make it harder for the vast majority of your passengers. I think especially a lot of us that are in the technology business, a lot of us that are used to using the mobile devices and feel comfortable with that, it might be a mistake to just assume that everyone's going to be comfortable with that and that everyone must eventually catch up. There's still a large demographic out there that aren't necessarily comfortable with those technologies, and offering touchless technology that might be, again, the virtual touchscreen, that might be voice recognition, that might be something else altogether, I think is important. Another key learning I think that's important is while you want to roll this out quickly, you also do want to test it and see how it works with your passengers and what does and doesn't work. That's been the, something that might be obvious, that you need to trial things to understand how they will work in the real world versus how they work in a lab. But I think this whole experience has really emphasized that, making sure that we understand how it works, who it's going to work for, and testing it in a real world environment, not just in a lab, is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking about other points here. So Aaron, I mean, you outline a vision that we can all understand, right, in terms of an airport of the future. I think that technology is not the problem, but this industry is caught up in a lot of legacy approaches and infrastructure and things like that. So how do we really make that breakthrough now to really deliver the kind of journey that you outline in the near future?
So, we might not necessarily think of COVID as an opportunity, considering how horrible it's been for all of us globally. But we should see it as an opportunity to reset how we think about working with each other, how we think about integrating with each other, and worry less about the boundaries that we've all previously turned around and said, oh, well, that's the airport's responsibility, or that's the airline's responsibility, or that's the ownership of one stakeholder versus another. I think, with the disruption that we've had to our industry, we should look at that as an opportunity to say, well, it's time to bring down the various walls that have been up there and actually work more closely together, and collaborate together. Because ultimately those costs that creep in, those inefficiencies that creep in when you have those boundaries, slow down the implementation of these technologies. Like you said, for the most part, the technology is here. It's really been around how do we work together to deploy that. So, no time like the present. We should work together to implement it. We should try and experiment with new things. Not everyone's going to get it perfect the first time, but if we learn together as an industry, we'll have a lower cost base, we'll have a better experience for our passengers, and we'll have ability to scale and as well as be ready in case something like this ever happens again.
Absolutely. And I guess sometimes it helps when you're working on developing a new facility, if you're an airline or an airport. And obviously Etihad, you made some big announcements with in terms of your rollout projects with them. And obviously they have a midfield terminal in development that's opening next year. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more perhaps about what the work that you're doing with Etihad and what we might be able to expect to see from them going forward in this kind of area?
Sure. So, we've continued to work very closely with Etihad, again, on refining the passenger experience and their vision for passenger experience for their airports in the future. We've been looking at a lot of this idea of the passengers not really tagging the bags themselves and having an agent do it, and yet still automate the rest of the process. So as far as a passenger is concerned, it's like an automated process, but somebody else is doing the tagging at the back end. Yeah. One of the reasons we've been looking at that, and it's a bit of a hybrid model, we've been looking at that is how do we make it nice and easy for the passenger? So, if you think about it, tagging a bag is probably the most cumbersome part of the overall self-service experience journey right now, no matter which airline or airport you're talking about. So we've been working on that. Now we've been looking at how we implement touchless technology and how we improve that. Again, being able to simply hold up your passport rather than having to put it into a passport reader. We've been experimenting with how do we improve that? How do we deal with different passport types? How do we deal with different demographics? That's been a great learning experience. So that whole adage of trying new things and trying them with real passengers and learning from that, that's what we've been focusing on with Etihad over the last 6 months during COVID. And I think there's a lot of fruit that's been born because of that.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly very much look forward to seeing their new midfield terminal open next year and the work that you've been doing together to come to fruition. Because, I think this is, as you say, a time for some transformative ideas to come into action. And I'm delighted to hear that you're really pushing through with your partners right now, which bodes very well for the future. So, I really appreciate you joining us today, Aaron. And I really appreciate, obviously, Phil for his contribution also. So I'm sure I certainly learned a lot there, and I'm sure our audience did. So thank you very much for joining us.
Wonderful.
We have a virtual networking session running for the next hour that you should definitely join. But at 4 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, we have a series of CEO fireside chats with the likes of Alaska Airlines and Los Angeles World Airports to kick off our Americas segment of the conference day. So thank you for your attention, and we'll see you a little bit later.